Hello and welcome. I'm Al Barrows, and this is UFO Disclosure, the podcast that's meant to show an average person's reaction to all the UFO, UAP news from everywhere and anywhere. So today I'm going to be talking about some viral videos of jellyfish, NHIs, or extraterrestrial jellyfish that have been videotaped floating around. Another ET type or NHI type entity that has been a lot on Twitter is a video of giants in Peru or Brazil, somewhere in South America. I'll be showing a bit of that video. I'll also be touching on the congressional briefing that occurred this past January the 12th and what outcome came of that. I'll also be talking about some negative reports on NHIs that might possibly be using body parts or human beings for consumption or trafficking, some sort of a negative purpose and associated with human abduction. Stay tuned. It's going to be a great podcast. I'd like to start out by reading from an article published on the dailymail.com. The title of it is Shocking New UFO Footage Shows Jellyfish Craft Not Visible to the Naked Eye Hovering Over Town in Video Buried by Intelligence Community. And maybe I should just show the video first so you guys can get an idea of what I'm talking about. Okay, here it is. It almost looks like a bunch of trash floating around, but it seems to have a definite direction that it's going in. It's just not being blown around by the wind as trash would, and it seems to be maintaining a certain height. And you can tell by the crosshairs that some sort of military scope is, or camera, taking footage of this or squid-like ET is what they're calling it. So you can only see this on thermal camera, they're saying. This is flying over a military base, okay, and goes underwater for 17 minutes. Okay, so I guess that's why they're calling it a jellyfish. Not only does it look like a jellyfish, but it can go under the water. I'm going to read directly from Martha Williams' article from the dailymail.com. Shocking new UFO footage has revealed a jellyfish craft that isn't visible to the naked eye, which was allegedly buried by the intelligence community. Leaked U.S. military footage of a mysterious flying object was unveiled by expert Jeremy Corbell. Okay, so this is coming from Jeremy Corbell. He was able to get his hands on this military footage. The UFO was supposedly submerged in water for 17 minutes, okay, folks, in the footage, before it launched out of the water at rapid speed. I don't think regular trash does that. He's quoted as saying it goes over a body of water, and I'm told it stops on a dime, descends stiff into the water, and for 17 minutes, nothing. And boom, this thing comes out of the water and shoots off at 45 degrees, Corbell said, describing the object's behavior. That is really, really odd, and it's definitely not the behavior that regular trash or balloons would exhibit. Okay, I'm going to go on with the article. Witnesses said that each of the hanging legs of the object were stiff and unmoving. So here's another one that was, I guess, taken in Mexico, or so the caption says. And take a look at how the jellyfish or the entity that's floating reacts to the dogs. Okay, so I think it's going to come from left to right here. Okay, so it's coming down the tracks, basically. Across the trash here, and the dogs seem to be aware of it. So the dogs can see it. The earlier video that I showed said that it was only visible at night vision or an infrared camera. Okay, so it's going to go underneath the lamppost here, get a good look at the silhouette. And here's yet another one, another video from Mexico. And I think you might even be able to see some movement or legs. Let's check it out. So this is from World War III, tweeted this. Another creepy video in Mexico is really similar to the jellyfish one. Okay, so from here, so far, it just looks like it might be a balloon. There it is by that white car. And I believe it goes around the car for some reason. Doesn't look too much like the other jellyfish. Um, and so far, it just sort of looks like it's floating around this white car. It does have an odd shape, though. Okay, now it's just going down the street there. And I believe it's nighttime. Yeah, it's nighttime. The light that we're seeing is from an overhead lamppost. Okay, so you can see a shadow on the ground. It's not CGI. Okay, this is a closer look. Seems to be some movement within the object itself, and it's coming closer to the ground. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but it might start to walk here. Looks like it's walking. Okay, it's no longer floating. Okay, so they almost looks like it's a teeny tiny person in silhouette walking towards the curb. Okay, now it's stepped onto the sidewalk or grassy sidewalk. Continues to walk. It definitely is walking. So it went from floating to walking now. And it's so far away that it's just a silhouette in shadows. Okay, there seems to be some sort of a light emanating from the top or the head of its silhouette there. Okay, it seems to be getting bigger. And it looks like it climbed up onto the power line. Yeah, it actually climbed up onto the power line. Okay, there's the object again, and it seems to be going across the power line and crossing the cross street. It does look like it's walking. That is really strange. Went from floating to walking. Okay, I see a dog or something running in the foreground. Yeah, there's a black and white dog there. Okay, now the entity seems to be a lighter color or has some light illuminating from it. It seems to be walking along the cross street there. And you can barely see the entity now. Okay, looks very light now. Almost looks white, and it does look like it's walking in the distance. Just on the other side of those cars. And I'm sorry, but this is not Spanish that I'm hearing. So I'm not sure if it's a Mexican video. Okay, so the entity just went by a building or a two-story home by a pickup truck. And that's it. That's it, folks. This is Mexican video, but I'm not hearing Spanish, which makes me suspicious. Something else that went viral on Twitter was reports of giants being seen on a hilltop in Brazil. Every other tweet seemed to be on that. And I'm just going to show a quick video of that because it's very hard to tell whether these are 9-foot tall extraterrestrials. I have my doubts on this one. Okay, so they spotted two 10-foot aliens on a hilltop in Brazil. I don't think that they're giants. I mean, it might just be the angle. And supposedly this hilltop is very hard to get to, and they very rarely have people up there. But that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody might have gotten up there. I don't know why this got so much publicity, but it went viral. I also came across this video, which claims that the aliens are involved in the war in Gaza. Might find this interesting. This was posted by Quartz Science, and the caption says, reptilians are on a war footing on Earth, attacking Israel, forcing them to pull back from Gaza. Also, U.S. Navy ships being attacked, which is being blamed on the Yemeni terrorists. Let me expand this so you guys can get a good look at this. Okay, so these are supposed to be reptilians in Gaza, attacking the Israelis and pushing them back. These aliens are also being blamed for what the Houthis are doing in the Red Sea. I'm not saying that NHIs wouldn't be involved in any man-made warfare. Just putting this out there. I'm not sure whether this is actual footage from Gaza, but it certainly looks like good ET footage. Those of you that are more familiar with CGI would know better, but I thought this was noteworthy, especially when they associated it with the war between Israel and the Palestinians in Gaza, and especially since now the United States is involved. Okay, so here's a comment from a couple of the reps after the congressional briefing on the UFO disclosure this past week, which occurred on Friday, January the 12th. So here's Representative Robert Garcia.
The bipartisan bill came out of a discussion at a first hearing to ensure that pilots have an ability to report UAPs. There right now is no system for pilots or aviation personnel to report UAPs, whatever UAPs may be, and so the bill would actually do that. Obviously, we can't talk about the details of the briefing, but I think there was some interesting information, and so I think that this is a topic that I think is a national security issue, and it's really important that there's disclosure and transparency. I think that's what the public wants. I think it's also a very serious topic, and so we've got to just take it with seriousness. It is not a joke.
And without giving up state secrets.
So I guess one of the few things that came out of the congressional briefing this past January the 12th was that pilots are more protected when they do decide to report a UFO sighting. And believe it or not, this is now just becoming a law, protective law for pilots. And here's Ryan Graves, one of the whistleblowers, talking about it.
Ryan Graves, come on in. Good to talk to you as always here on the Hill on News Nation. So this is an idea. Obviously, you were in the military. You were a fighter pilot. This is for commercial pilots, right? Like if you see something, give a reporting mechanism and give them protections. What do you make of this proposed bipartisan bill?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. For the first time, commercial pilots are now going to have the ability to report UAP incidents through trusted reporting channels, and they don't have to fear repercussions on their medical license or from their employer.
Is this long overdue?
It's long overdue. We've been hearing from pilots even before the hearings, but especially after the hearings, how happy they are that there's now an opportunity to speak about these issues. On a regular basis, commercial pilots are seeing unknown objects, both very high altitudes as well as in the airspace around them. So we've been seeing that this is now more of a global issue, and the more that reporting there is, the better we'll understand what's happening.
There's the group of bipartisan lawmakers that have been all over this UAP story ever since News Nation broke it in the middle of last year. It started with that, and it's built to this.
Okay, so that was Ryan Graves. One of three whistleblowers from the historic UAP congressional hearing this past summer. Remember, it was David Grush, David Fravor from the Tic Tac incident, and Ryan Graves, of course, who just spoke. And he's been a big proponent of protection for pilots reporting UAP or UFO sightings. At least commercial pilots are now protected. So here's Tim Burchett, one of the leading House of Representative proponents. He's from Tennessee. What his expectations were on the briefing and how he was pretty much on the nose. Not much came out of it.
The thing you got to worry about when you go into the skiff, if they tell you something, even if you already knew it or suspected it, you're not supposed to be able to talk about it. So I'm sort of leery of these meetings where they tell you a bunch of stuff and just to keep it secret. And further entangle you in this little web of deceit.
So that was Burchett from Tennessee. How he's able to have two rifles in his office in Washington, D.C. is beyond me. But I guess you can't blame him after the storming of Washington, D.C. On January the 6th. I guess he wants to be prepared. But he was pretty much on the nose when it came to, after the briefing, not much came out of it. We know that commercial pilots now are protected. But other than that, much of what was said in the skiff has remained secret.
UFO programs. He then testified that federal officials are in possession of crashed, non-human vehicles. Now, Burchett says testimonies like that are the reason that he and his colleagues continue pushing for answers.
It's, I think it's coming in from all over the country, if not the world now. But I think Congress is we really woke up a sleeping giant. Turns out everybody just about has a UFO story.
Okay, so not much information came out of that SCIF meeting, but I just thought that I should keep you guys informed of what's going on. We know that commercial pilots are better protected now, and that Congress is still having these SCIF or secret compartmentalized intelligence facility meetings. People with clearances can hear classified information. So not much came out of that. I'd like to move on and talk about the story that came out during Dr. Greer's press club event about a Marine who reported human trafficking after having spotted a huge UFO. This is, I'm reading from How and Why's, an online magazine, and this article is by the excellent journalist Vicky Verma. On June the 12th, 2023, Dr. Stephen Greer, a renowned founder of the Disclosure Project, presented a compelling 3-hour UFO conference. This conference featured whistleblowers who shared their astonishing testimonies. For 33 years, Dr. Greer has dedicated himself as a volunteer to the Disclosure Project. His most recent event before this was held 22 years ago on May the 9th, 2001, where 22 individuals from various government sectors participated. In this long disclosure event, Dr. Greer presented his investigations on secret programs, and he was joined by 6 courageous whistleblowers who shared compelling information about covert operations. Among them was Michael Herrera, a former United States Marine, who shared an astonishing account from 2009 where he and 5 comrades saw a giant UFO being loaded with weapons while serving in Indonesia. During this incident, they were threatened at gunpoint by unmarked U.S. forces at the scene. Herrera was assigned to the 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, described as the most decorated infantry battalion within the Marine Corps. This battalion was part of Operation Quetzana, a humanitarian mission in the Philippines in 2009. Herrera's unit was affiliated with the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, primarily conducting maritime operations across Southeast Asia. Herrera was on the USS Denver and went to help after a big tsunami and earthquake hit Padang City in Indonesia. They knew it was a dangerous place because of the threat from terrorist activities prevalent in Indonesia. Their job was to keep the area safe and give people things they needed like medical supplies, food, water, and shelter. Herrera was picked to be one of the main people for this job. When they landed in Padang, it was all broken and damaged. Everything looked bad with fires and floods everywhere. They quickly went to a higher place so they could see better and plan. They had to be ready for anything. Herrera and his team, armed with M16A4 rifles, advanced about 300 meters, maintaining a tactical column formation. Their primary goal was to maintain situational awareness, be prepared for potential engagements, and execute their mission amidst the harrowing conditions. Herrera had a camera and was taking pictures of a damaged area from a high spot, but he noticed something strange, a weird object in the jungle. This thing looked different from the trees around it. It changed colors from light gray to dark black and spun around. This was so memorable for Herrera that he could not forget it for 14 years. He and his team took pictures and videos of this odd object. And for you guys that have a visual, there's a sketch here of the UFO that Herrera saw from August of 2009. It was sketched in western Indonesia. As they got closer to the strange object, Herrera and his team saw a group of soldiers. These soldiers looked American. A group of soldiers, or as Herrera described them, quote, rogue military force, end quote. What made this encounter even more unsettling was their distinctly American appearance and gear. These were not just any soldiers. They were equipped similarly to elite special operations units, dressed in black camouflage and donning OTVs. Finding these soldiers made things even more confusing. Why were they there? Were they part of a secret mission or something even stranger? As the tension escalated, Herrera and his team were on high alert. These soldiers looked like U.S. Special Forces but acted differently. Their clothes, weapons, and tools showed they were well trained. Even though Herrera and his team were outnumbered, they stayed calm. Their main goal was to keep safe and learn more about the unknown flying object and the mysterious soldiers. Herrera thought maybe they were there to protect the craft and was curious about where it came from. The flying object Herrera saw had unique features. He noticed its color changes and its pyramid-like top. It also made a sound like a guitar amp or a machine. Quote, they had no insignias on. The soldiers' attire and equipment far surpassed the standard issue gear Herrera and his unit possessed. Their M4A4 rifles were enhanced with Advanced Combat Optical Gun Sights, or ACOGs, and PEC-16 IR illumination devices, indicating advanced capabilities and possibly specialized training. Things got intense quickly. Herrera remembered these soldiers yelling at him and his team. They made scary threats, suggesting they could harm them severely or even make them disappear. The soldiers were very thorough. They checked everyone's ID carefully, using a device that looked like they were scanning their military cards. This made Herrera believe they were very organized and knew what they were doing. Herrera also saw some trucks that looked suspicious. The trucks had special containers, and there were rumors that these might be used for illegal activities, like smuggling people. It was what these trucks were transporting that took center stage in Herrera's recounting. He described the craft in vivid detail. Quote, it floated right above the tree line, end quote. He emphasized its unique shape, stating, quote, on each corner, it emanated a light. It was either red, yellow, green, or blue. Only those four colors I can distinctly remember, end quote. This octagonal craft, with its mesmerizing lights, seemed to defy conventional understanding as Herrera continued to describe its departure. Quote, as soon as it was able to break that tree line, Herrera recounted, it shot over to the left, basically where the ocean was, at a speed so fast I would estimate probably 3, 4, 5,000 miles an hour. Instantaneous like that, end quote. The craft's rapid movement, devoid of any discernible sonic boom or disturbance, left Herrera and his team in a state of shock and bewilderment. After this weird encounter, Herrera was approached by someone from the Air Force. This person, even though not wearing a name tag, made Herrera sign a paper promising not to talk about what happened. As Herrera concluded his account, he made a compelling plea to Washington, urging political figures to address the situation. Quote, there are people who are either being hurt or killed by this, end quote, he emphasized, highlighting the gravity of the events he witnessed. According to the Daily Mail, Herrera left the Navy in October 2011. His certificate of release showing 4 years of active duty and medals for National Defense Service, Global War on Terrorism Service, Humanitarian Service, and Sea Service Deployment, and a sharpshooter rifle badge. Throughout their mission, he took several photographs and videos, capturing the devastation and potentially more. Herrera concealed this vital evidence in his dump pouch, which seemed to go unnoticed by the individuals overseeing the mission. When Herrera and his team got back to their ship, strange things started happening. After their tough trip, Herrera and his team went to Subic Bay in the Philippines for a break. They tried to relax and have fun, but when Herrera went back to his ship, he found his camera in his locker. Sadly, the battery and memory card were gone. When he tried to use it again, it did not work. Herrera felt upset because he realized how important the missing camera parts were to his story. During an event with Dr. Greer, Herrera thought the containers they saw might have drugs, but someone from the group told him they were not drugs. This new information made everyone wonder, what were they really hiding? What was it? Why was it so secret? And how does this affect Herrera and his team? Herrera said that these mysterious people have been doing secret stuff since the 1990s. Most of them come from JSOC, which is like the top experts in the military. Herrera met these secretive people in a safe place out west. When he got there, they had strict rules to make sure no one was listening in on their talk. What Herrera learned surprised him. He originally thought their main thing was illegal drug deals, but it turned out to be something even stranger. They seemed interested in people from certain backgrounds or groups like Bureau of Indian Affairs. These people were seen as spiritually wise and not influenced by mainstream beliefs, making them important for what the group was doing. Herrera describes a group that works everywhere, not just in one country. They keep their actions hidden and use very advanced machines. To most people, these machines might look like they come from outer space, but they are made by humans. Because no one knows much about them, they can act fast and quietly. A surprising thing Herrera says is that this group sometimes shoots down crafts that seem to be from outer space. They do this a few times every year. They also have stronger weapons that can destroy other countries' copied machines. Herrera tells stories of private planes that accidentally go into their area and get shot down. No one knows what happened to these planes or the people inside. So they shoot down ET crafts a few times a year, retrieve them, and then take them away for analysis or whatever they do with them. Additionally, they shoot down aircraft from other agencies for reverse engineering purposes. Regrettably, some private aircraft have suffered tragic consequences because they didn't divert their course. These planes were targeted with advanced weapons, which aren't just experimental. They are regularly used. After such incidents, they dispose of the wreckage and bodies and issue missing persons reports. They are adept at keeping their secrets, and that's how their operations function. I thought that was very revealing, that article by Vicky Verma. Anthony Herrera went on to meet with this paramilitary group, and they revealed to them that they had weapons that were shooting down extraterrestrial craft and advanced craft from other agencies and reverse engineering them. And the whole part about the possible drug trafficking or / human trafficking and an interest in people with an Indian background and special sense of spirituality was also noteworthy. I'm going to go on to show Ted Rice, who claims to have witnessed negative NHIs consuming or capturing humans, actual human babies, and consuming them. Now, mind you, his testimony is a result of hypnotic regression. And I've said before that I'm not a big supporter of testimony or testimony from abductees that comes as a result of hypnotic regression, because I believe that the hypnotist can implant false memories or make suggestions during the hypnotic trance. But Ted Rice has been on social media all over the place this week, so I thought it was only right to show him as well. Just a fair warning for those of you that would prefer not to see this. It's pretty graphic, so please don't or skip over this part if you prefer not to hear the gruesome details. This is from Our Aliens, posted this, and the caption says it's a human meat processing plant, end quote. The harrowing account of abductee Ted Rice about the Dulce underground base.
And for years I've held back because it was just absolutely too awful to tell anyone. And I didn't know how people would react. And also I was afraid that my life might be put in danger by spilling the beans on what I saw. But I'm going to tell it here today to Dulce. And we approach an area where small crafts are coming in. There's lots of them. It's like a big hangar. And out of each craft I could see that they would bring out one, sometimes two. I don't know if there was three or not. It could have been three, maybe, humans, and they put them in like a little buggies that was on like a rail track, and they set the people up in that. Now, the overseers operating the system, shockingly to me, were human, or they appeared to be human. And what shocked me even more was these tall Nordic, blonde-haired, blue-eyed men operating this system were wearing uniforms with the swastika on the shoulders, an emblem, an insignia of the swastika. Now, think about this, and think about World War II and what all was going on there, and the association of this might indicate who was controlling Hitler and what was really behind all that. Well, we drew close to where these humans overseers were working. These overseers could not see me, nor the entity that was guiding me and taking me there. We were, to me, ethereal. We were not in solid form where they could see us, but these workers, these Nordic people, were solid material. The humans they brought in, they put in these little train cars, were all sitting there like zombies, like they were stunned. And one of the things that bothered me, and the first time I saw this with Barbara under hypnosis, it really wrecked me emotionally. And I saw a young woman of maybe 28 to 30 years old, a very pretty, attractive brunette lady, and she had a little boy with her about 7 or 8 years old, and he was sitting there with her. Both of them had been brought in, and I panicked, and I knew that something bad was about to happen to them, and I ran to wake them up, and I got right in their face, and I was like yelling to wake up, and they were not even aware I was there, and the Nordic overseers couldn't have seen or hear me either. So I was protected in that sense. Some way they had me concealed where nothing was aware that we were there. But this woman, they rolled on and went on down the conveyor belt, and so then we moved to a different area, and the person that was taking me, or the entity that was taking me, stopped and said, "Listen." And I stopped, and we listened, and in the background you could hear kind of like a very dull ripping kind of noise. And I remember beginning to feel panicky, and I didn't want to go see what was making that awful noise. And the entity that was taking me insisted and said, "You must see it, you must see it." And so I looked, and what I saw were human torsos hanging on big meat hooks, and they hooked bone to hooks in the back of the body, and they were ripping the bones out of the human bodies to fillet it.
And who was doing this?
The Nordics. The next phase of Dulce that I saw was, we went to a large room that was extremely cold, and inside this room were boxes that were like little small metal caskets, only they weren't caskets, they were more like coolers, and they were bringing in human body parts, arms, legs, torsos, all kinds of body parts, and packing them into these crates. And then there were a lot of them. It was a big operation, and I saw, I'm going to say probably 6 different Nordics working on 6 different boxes at one time, if I recall correctly. And they were packing all this in, and then they were putting the boxes once they're full on a conveyor belt roller, and it reminded me of present day where your luggage comes in at an airport on those rollers. It was like rolling on that, and it rolled into an area where there were a lot of craft waiting, and they were loading them these crafts where they were taking them, in my opinion, I assume they were taking them out to colonies in space somewhere, or colonies here on our own planet that we're not aware of.
Okay, so I told you that it was gruesome. That's been on social media quite a bit. My podcast intent is to show an average person's reaction to all the UAP, UFO news from everywhere and anywhere. And this was one of the prevalent items out there. I thought I need to show it. I'm not endorsing or saying that what he's saying is true. He's talking about negative NHIs, negative extraterrestrials, of course. So I'm just putting it out there. I think that for those of you that are not aware of this, just to make you aware of it. Here's another video that I came across with Ted Rice giving testimony. This is an Irish podcaster that's questioning him. And this is just as gruesome, by the way. This was posted by Our Aliens also. And the caption says, "I saw them feed on children's flesh." So this is even more gruesome, just a fair warning. Abductee Ted Rice talks about his encounters with insectoids. Okay, so now it's gone from Nordics, reptilians to insectoids. So now I'm starting to wonder about his story. It's not consistent.
I had encountered a mantis being until under hypnosis with Barbara Barth.
As far as them being known as caretakers for children, you've got a completely different view of what they're doing to the children, which is what?
Well, you got to understand the nature of these aliens. We're dealing with non-human entities, but we as humans want to make them act and think like humans, because we can relate to them better. And I deal with people, talk with people all the time who are very pro-alien. They really think and feel that they're here for our best interest. But yet I have not run across any evidence that makes me feel that's true. All the encounters that I've had with them have not been positive. They've done some positive things to trick me into thinking they're positive, but I learned that these were lies and deceptions. Okay, so we have to get to the nature of these mantis. Now, a small, tiny insectoid mantis there that you find on a bush by your house or in the forest, what does it do? Just because it's been genetically created to be human size or bigger, taller, doesn't change the nature of what it actually is. And it may have been, its brain may have been genetically improved so that it has rational, the ability to think, create, and act outside and beyond the insectoid position in its natural state. But that doesn't mean that its true character has changed. And it's still an insect. It still behaves like an insect, and it feeds on flesh of other creatures. And I witnessed this on a ship where I was. I saw a craft come in with children, babies. I'm gonna say they probably, the oldest one was maybe 4. They were 4 down to toddlers, diapers, and they were brought in and they were taken off of this circular round craft onto a conveyor belt, and they were, now the children were kind of, I'm not going to say totally paralyzed because they were moving their arms and legs, but the children were somewhat like in a coma. But they rode this conveyor belt inside a compartment, and this is gross and this is horrible. But this story has to be told. People have to know what we're dealing with. This was a processing center where these children were being prepared for food to feed these mantis. And they were taken in there, and all of their extremities, their arms, legs, their heads were all removed by a laser knife type thing. They just seared right across it and it dropped off. And these parts of the bodies were packed in containers to be sent somewhere else. I'm not sure. I didn't witness where they were taken. But then the torso cavity was split open. It was put on continuing this conveyor belt, and it went down onto what looked like, it wasn't, but the closest thing I can say to describe it was like a conveyor belt, but it rode very slowly as if it was like a buffet line. And these tall mantis, and there was bunches of them, they were feeding on the organs inside the cavity of these remains. Now, is this gross and sick enough? But I saw it. I even told Barbara, I said, my God, it looked like they were eating into a big baked potato. And now, when I've told this story, people say, you're just trying to horrify everybody. Well, you know, I've been quiet for years. I didn't want to tell people what I knew to protect all of you listening. This is one of the reasons I say the government has gone to extreme measures to make sure that we don't know what's really happening because they can't fix it. And I think one of the main reasons, and I'm not taking up for the government, but I think I can see what would I have done, what would you have done in that position to have recovered that craft at Roswell and found such remains inside that told them probably what was going on, but there was absolutely nothing they could do to stop it. Of course, they lied to the whole world. They didn't want the panic.
So I hope to God that Ted Rice is wrong. It's horrific, and I apologize for some of you that were really stunned and shocked and disgusted by Ted Rice's testimony. He does change from Nordic aliens to insectoids, and his report is a result of hypnotic regression. So I don't put as much bank into what he says as others. It's interesting that Anthony Herrera spoke about possible human trafficking, not by aliens, but by paramilitary group. So there's so much that we don't know. I mean, add to that the jellyfish entity that people are videotaping all over the place now that seems to have some sort of intelligent navigation going on. There's just so much that we just don't know. It's hard to reach any conclusions, but I think it's important to be aware of what's going on and what could possibly go on instead of being ignorant and being used or have these things happen to us and be passive about it, not know what's going on. I think that it's important to have more transparency, push the government and Congress to find out, and if they do know, to let us know what's going on. Even if they don't exactly know 100% what's going on, or if they do know that this is going on, human trafficking or people being farmed for food, if that's as outrageous as that sounds, if it is true, we have a right to know. And even if they can't stop it, at least let us know about it so that we could possibly be prepared for it. In that vein, I think that it's important for us to continue to push Congress for more transparency, for more congressional hearings. If you go to the newparadigmproject.org, it's very easy. You just click a couple of icons and it lets your representative know, local and federal, that you would like more transparency, more congressional hearings on UAPs. I did that and I got a response right away. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. My name is Al Barrows. This has been UFO Disclosure. I have a website called UFO-disclosure.com. My Instagram is UFO Disclosure Podcast. My Twitter is at UFO Disclosure with an underscore at the end. My YouTube channel is at UFO disclosure, dash B as in Bravo, R as in Romeo, 3YY. Please keep searching for the truth. All my good intentions and love go out to all. Manifest good things for the children out there, especially those in the Ukraine and in Gaza. They're lonely and afraid, and they need all our help. Thank you. Thank you for listening to my podcast.